There you go. Welcome everybody to Contemporary Issues class. Thank you for being here. We are going to talk about the brain today. Ron is going to be our tour guide of the brain. And see,
I'm sorry, I'm stopping here. What?
pardon me? Okay.
Our brain guide.
Our brain guide. Yes. Yeah, I think it's a great topic. I've always thought that people's level of kindness or cooperation, you know, how we act is often determined by our brains.
That's
The
who we
way
are.
the way we're wired or our chemistry. Obviously, mental illness decides how we behave, whether we want to or not. So this will be a good topic. You know, we can hear all the sermons we want and try to be as kind as we do, but maybe our brain decides part of it for us. Yeah. So welcome, everybody. Usual announcements here. First, Zoomers, please mute yourself in the lower left corner of your screen if you can, so we can keep the background noise down. But do speak to us too. We'd love to have your comments and unmute when you do that. And we are recording this for future playback also. Other announcements, we have a Christmas party coming up December 5, is it, Ron? I think, yeah. It's going to be here at the church. And so come and play some trivia and have some barbecue, are we? I think something like that. And I'll send out more email about that. Great sermon today, I thought.
Yeah.
Yes.
Wasn't it really phrased well and thoughtful as usual by Mark? Talking about kindness and how we are so divided. And it reminded me how I'm so sick of the TV political
Yes.
commercials.
Yes.
They're attacking each other. I
Yes.
just mute those when they come on.
Yeah. Yep.
And how can those people do that with a clear conscience? You know, how do they attack each other and justify that in their minds as being acceptable? I don't
Yeah.
understand.
So much of it's lies.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Channel
It's
9
out
always
and
does a
out
truth
Yeah.
checkup and they
And
find out.
intentionally
It's
twisted.
just, they're lying, yeah.
Sad, sad, sad. Well, now that we've been on our high horse, anything else going on to announce? Ladies retreat today has 40-some ladies down in Colorado Springs, so that's good. And sure, Judy, go ahead.
The Women's Auxiliary of Salvation Army is having their holiday boutique at Alameda and Quebec this coming Friday and Saturday. And Salvation Army really does save lives. So, and the boutique is huge, and they have many very high quality, beautiful items for a very low price. So try to, it's at Fairmount.
Okay, great.
Fairmount Cemetery that they have.
I just want to say the music and the inspiration today was outstanding.
Yes, Ken, so passionate.
Mhm.
Yeah, dramatic. Very good. Zoomers, can you hear us when our members are speaking? Okay, just checking, make sure our system is working good. Okay. All right, any other, hello Lola. Any other comments? Things coming up, lots going on at church, Christmas coming. Many things to put on the calendar. Okay, Ron, let's talk about our brains.
All righty. The material for today comes from the book and Netflix. It's on Netflix or Amazon Prime, I believe, one of the two. It's a BBC, British Broadcasting, presentation by David Eagleman on the brain. So he's got two books that are kind of companions on that. And both of them are fascinating. And since all of us have brains, or at least most of us, it's always interesting to know more about yourself. So let's get started. You know me, I love comics and comic characters. We've opened up here with a picture of Fred Flintstone, and he's getting the two voices from the good angel on the right and the bad devil on the left. Then there's a robot tasked with saving the earth. And, This reminds me of the phrase, you got to get your head screwed on straight. Only one of these heads can help me save the earth from destruction, but how can I tell which one?
Can you do the slideshow, Steve? So it gets enlarges, or does that follow up here?
It does foul up.
Okay.
Sorry about that.
Okay.
Okay, next slide. Again, there's the two books by Eagleman. Next slide. Okay. Well, what is the brain? Well, it's an electrochemical network. There are billions, hundreds of billions of neurons and glial cells in in everyone's brain. And they send electrical pulses. A typical neuron in the brain makes about 10,000 connections to neighboring neurons. And and here's an important point, the vast majority of you can think of your brain as a giant set of interacting computer programs. And the majority of them are down deep in the operating system where you don't even kind of know they're there. For example, your breathing is being controlled, your heart rate, a lot of other body functions, perspiration, arousal, all those kind of things. But the majority of them are things you can't even get to with your brain. You can't consciously think about controlling your heart rate, or it's kind of tough to do that. So it's a giant set of operating systems, and we want to point out that there's an awful lot of things you do that are just built-in firmware that you've pre-programmed, like riding a bicycle. Nobody thinks after they've learned, has their brain strongly engaged when you're riding a bike. You just pedal and your body knows what to do to keep balance, walking, shooting a basket, many aspects of your driving, changing lanes. You don't have to consciously think, let's see, I got to change lanes. And look, I got to turn this much. So a tremendous amount of what's going on in your body is things that you don't consciously have to think
They
about.
become programmed.
And you can't even examine exactly what's going on. If you're walking across a tightrope, your brain, it's doing it automatically with a pre-built program. Same thing with a baseball, for those who are watching the World Series. If you're playing outfield and the ball is hit, you don't have time to think about what path do I run to intercept that ball. Your brain just kind of takes over with the automatic program. Same thing with hitting. You get Justin Verlander throwing a pitch at 95 miles an hour. It's kind of an automatic subroutine that's going on in the brain. Okay, next one. Motor and sensory nerves. Motor nerves send out signals for movement. That's an armadillo that's been shocked, startled. And then sensory nerves collect information to send back to the brain. You can react to a flash, a lightning bolt, in 190 milliseconds, but you can react to a bang, a sound signal, even faster. That's why when they start a race, they don't start a race with a flash of light for the runners. They start with a gunshot. It's 30 milliseconds improved response time
Wow.
to a bang versus a flash. Now, if you have to decide whether you saw a red flash or a green flash, it takes even longer. And then if you have to name the flash color you saw, it takes even longer. So our brain response time varies greatly on the complexity and the kind of task and sensory input. Frog catching a fly, boy, they kind of do it automatically. Next one. Okay. Incognito activity. We got a lot of stuff going on in our brain we don't even realize. Men were asked to rate photos of women, and they were basically the same set of photos with a subtle difference. Half of the eyes were dilated, half were not. The men were consistently more attracted to the women with dilated eyes, which correlated with sexual excitement, but didn't realize it. In other words, they showed the groups the same pictures, some same woman, same facial expression, except one had dilated eyes, the other picture didn't. And The guys get more excited by dilated eyes. I guess ladies probably do too. Okay, and with all these neural subpopulations, we can possibly have a racist and non-racist part of the brain. Part of your brain has some, unfortunately, we have tribal connections, and we react quicker and faster, and more favorably initially to people that look like us, talk like us, same skin color as us, that kind of thing. So you've got an awful lot going on in your brain that is incognito to you. Okay, next one. Well, you know I like comic books. So is the prefrontal cortex the CEO of the Neural Congress? So think of your brain as a giant meeting table where you have a round table or a square table, whatever it is, but you've got all the different groups at that table. Some you know are there. Some are there secretly and you don't even realize it. The CEO's calling the meeting and running the meeting. You see certain parts of it, you feel the influence of certain parts of your brain, but there's a lot of people that are hidden under mask, like that left comic book cover. In that case, the guy with the top hat was actually the Joker. That meeting of bad guys. We also like to think we have Jesus in our brains. Some teach that the Holy Spirit or the Spirit of Jesus comes in when you are born again. Some feel that you have a divine spirit inside at that meeting table. And then, of course, I've got the cartoon of Fred Flintstone's better and not so better halves there. So you've got this giant meeting, and there's a conversation going on with the different factions of your brain. They're each competing to control the single output channel of your behavior. Some of those behavior decisions have to be made real fast. I mean, real fast for some circumstances of life. When you're in danger, flee, fight, whatever. Some decisions you have to make like in 5 or 6 seconds or even less. Other things you have more time to cogitate over, think about, whatever. So think of your brain as a giant conference going on with members you know that are there and a lot of people you don't even know are at the table, like that left picture. Okay, next one. And then there's some of the basic urges of life. Yeah, urge to merge, socialize, food, have to use the bathroom, beer 300 miles. Yeah. Those are basic biological urges that are rising and falling every minute of the day, like I'm reaching for a little bit of water right now. Okay, next one. And some people have a different beliefs on the brain. Some feel that the true you is not this electrochemical conference, but some feel that there's like there's a ghost or soul inside you that's running the show. In that case, for those that have watched cartoons as a kid, who is that on the left? Casper, yeah. Some people believe you have a Casper, and you have a divine spirit, and you have maybe an evil voice speaking inside. But science doesn't really support that slide. Information with God. There's really no scientific evidence for a Casper inside you. It's the real you.
But there's a longstanding Christian tradition, that doctrine that there's the God and the devil talking to you, that there is a spiritual battle. So many scriptures about spiritual battle that is going on in your mind. You have to put on the armor and guard against that.
Yep. Okay, next one. Okay, we're going to talk about the trolley dilemma. This is a classical study, and they've done this across many nations and societies and groups. The first problem is you're there by a railroad track where there's a switch. You got a switch thing. You can throw change the train direction. There's a big runaway train. It's coming fast, and you're there at the switch, and if you leave it on the current track, there's 5 or 6 workers down there, they're for sure gonna all get killed instantly. They have no time to react or see it, time. But if you throw the switch to go divert the train on the side track, you'll only kill like 1 person. So what do? What's the class thing? What is the right thing to do? Do you throw the switch or not?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. Most societies, when they query people, say, yeah, you should throw the switch. Okay, now we're going to make it change the situation. Instead of the switch, there's this very obese guy, big enough to stop the trolley, on an overpass. And now you get to decide, same situation, I can push the heavy guy in front of the trolley. That'll derail it or slow it down enough that we can save all these people. Do I push the guy off the bridge over that trolley?
Active intervention.
Yeah. Now that it gets tougher. And now more people say, no, I don't think I have the right to push the guy. But if you look at it mathematically, it's the same results and consequences. Okay, but now we do situation 3. This time there's a runaway trolley and there's the obese guy, but he's standing on a trap door. And you've got the switch to flip the trap door and drop him there. Now do you do it? And now people are still divided, societies are still divided, but more people are willing to flip the trap door instead of physically pushing him. So those are the 3 situations. And they've run this experiment with, again, a lot of societies. Next, what they find with the pull the lever decision, the areas in dark of the brain are involved. Pull the lever. If you try to do the push decision, it gets far more personal. More areas of the brain get involved, and the emotional voters at this big conference start putting their votes in, and it makes it much, much tougher. So brain has to make decisions sometimes with a different conference collection there, but relatively the same sort of moral decision. Okay, next one. Okay, I'm going to call this one fame now or fame later. You're offered $100 today or $110 next week. What do you take? Actually, they find most people say, give me the $100 now. I don't want to wait a week for it. But if they tell people, I'll give you $100 a year from now, or $110 51 weeks from now, or actually I should have said 53. I messed up the number. Most people say, well, if I'm going to have to wait that long, almost a whole year, I might as well wait one more week and get the bigger sum of money.
Social Security.
Yeah.
Yeah, there you go.
Okay.
Yeah.
But the Greeks felt that going through life, you're kind of riding a chariot, and you have a white horse that is logic on one side pulling the chariot, and you've got a black horse that is emotion that's working. And they felt like you had to kind of, balance the 2 horses to keep the chariot, your life going down the center. And then of course, there's many plays and movies. I love the movie Damn Yankees, where the guy, Joe Hardy, says, well, I'd sell my soul to beat those damn Yankees. And the guy that played in My Favorite Martian, the lead role, comes up to him as the role of the devil and says, I'll make you a deal. He makes him a famous baseball star because he sells the soul. But Joe starts to realize he's made a mistake and tries to find a loophole in the contract. And I won't spoil the story, but it goes from there. The Germans say you must overcome your inner Schweinhund, your inner pig. So I like that one. So the world religions are optimized to tap into your emotional networks. Most religions drive towards putting more appeal on the emotional force, and lesser approach to the reasoning. Okay, next one. 2 memory registers. Normal memories of daily events go into your hippocampus, okay, an area of the brain called hippocampus. But if you have a trauma or traumatic memory, like being attacked on the street or a car accident,
Or abused.
something like that, it'll get laid down. The memory gets laid down in a couple places in the brain, often in a place called a secondary memory tract. It's more difficult to erase or suppress. And if you think about it, yeah, you do remember really, really traumatic, especially fearful and dangerous parts of your life. Of course, you also remember exhilarating events. First time you kissed some cute guy or gal. Okay. So the brain has also evolved multiple independent ways to solve problems, such as detecting motion. So your brain does have some backup programs, such that if one method kind of is faltering, another area of sensory perception can help you make the decision. There's a backup in your brain. Okay, next one. Cognitive reserve. They found that they've done some autopsies on people, and they found that some people have evidence of significant neural ravages of Alzheimer's when they do the autopsy on them, but it never seemed to show up. And they said, well, this doesn't mean you could prevent it necessarily. You might not be one of the lucky ones that is able to overcome the effect. But they do say, if you challenge your brain in old age by staying active, crossword puzzles, and other activities that stimulate your neural activities, you get at least some degree of protection from Alzheimer's. Again, it can't be stopped in many, many cases, but it can often be reduced a little bit if you try to keep that brain exercised. And again, you have a cognitive reserve, multiple brain paths to address issues of life. Having multiple ways to allocate decisions also helps you survive. A predator like a crocodile in an African river knows the wildebeest are always going to go down the same trail, the same path, the same time of year to cross the river, and they wait for them. The humans will often, we have a higher order neural activity in brain. We won't always follow exactly the same path or action. And it made it harder for our potential predators who lived in the days of predators to pick us off because of that. Okay, next one.
However, they do say that if you are a person who is concerned about being targeted for any kind of crime, that you should vary your drive to work every day,
Okay.
right? How many of us actually do that? I don't. I take the exact same direction every single day. I almost park in the exact same parking spot. So, there are ways where we are habitual,
Okay.
and maybe we should be a little less like wildebeest.
If you're a lady working downtown at night, you come out of a business at exactly 7:32, and you walk exactly to the same location. Yeah,
Possibly, yeah.
Yeah.
Anyway, just a thought, yeah.
good point. Okay, we've seen this slide before on the brain lateralization. There's some of the characteristics that tend to be stronger and more controlled by one side of the brain than the other, so-called left and right hemisphere. Okay, spend the course on that, so we'll jump on to the next one. Next slide. Influence to your brain. They found quite a bit. Your brain works better, or at least your emotions will be happier if you sit up straight instead of slouching. Okay, so you improve your mood by, not, letting it all hang out. So Also, they found when you hold a pencil between your teeth when reading, your body tells you it's smiling. And when you read, you'll think the material is funny. So bite on a pencil when you're reading the comic strip.
Lead pencil.
So there's many benefits emotionally and brain function wise. You have a little better posture, and you don't put yourself in an uncomfortable position. Of course, the same is true with being in more comfortable environments. If you're in a hot room, no air circulating, things, your brain doesn't work as well. Next one. Okay, so the two hemispheres of the brain are connected by a dense highway of fibers. We'll call it the fiber optic network, called the corpus callosum. And in the 50s, some neurobiologists cut the corpus callosum of monkeys and cats, and some acted very normal. Split brain surgery was conducted on human epilepsy patients in 61, and the surgeries worked beautiful to prevent the debilitating seizures from occurring and enabled the patients to live a fairly normal life. There was a famous case of a guy having a railroad spike driven through one side of his brain.
In Vermont.
And he survived and was fairly normal after that. Next slide.
But he was cranky.
He was cranky.
We also have the
Big guy.
case
Never rode the
on
train
this
yet.
of who knows who that is on the left. Gabby Giffords had a bullet penetrate, pass through a large part of one of the hemispheres of the brain. Because of the duality of the brain hemispheres, she's been able to make a somewhat miraculous recovery. Does she have all the full skills and abilities she did before the gunshot? No. But the very fact that she can coherently deliver speeches and talk and function at all is certainly an amazing testimony to the brain. And they have found that if you can get the brain damage limited to one side, you have a better chance than if both sides get.
There's a free publication, it's called The Brain Magazine, and they feature Gifford on the front cover, and she gives her testimony, phasing with language and thoughts. But just to amplify what you were using her as an example here, it's called The Brain Magazine. It's a free subscription. It's available for those of you who might be interested. Go ahead. You said Gifford there. That's just.
Oh, yeah. But they also found that there's a very rare epilepsy caused by something called Rasmussen's encephalitis. And they found if a child gets this and they perform an operation on the child before they're 8 years old, take out one hemisphere, that child will be pretty much normal, not be overcome with these
How did
horrific
they take out?
seizures.
How did they take out?
I don't know the operation procedure. It's obviously not simple. Okay,
What do they put in place of it?
excellent. Now comes the, I gotta brag on my bear picture. That's a picture of a bear I took there in Washington Canyon this summer. But what is consciousness? Consciousness exists to control and distribute control over the many automated subroutines in your brain. Obviously, a really simplistic creature like an amoeba or a couple, maybe a 10-celled organism doesn't have any consciousness. When a life form moves up on the evolutionary scale, and the automated subroutines reach a certain level of number and complexity, it requires a high-level mechanism to be the CEO, run the show. And that's where consciousness starts coming in. Consciousness is not an all or nothing quality in the animal kingdom. It comes in degrees, and in the animal kingdom, more necessary as the creature has more subroutines to manage or control. Next slide. The grizzly bear, for example, it has an uncanny ability to evade human predators. They have found during hunting season, a grizzly tries to disguise itself. It will not only lure in places, hang out in places where it's better camouflage, but it also has the ability when it crosses a stream or something, leaves some tracks in the sand, even wipe off some of the track marks. So it surely shows a consciousness in a grizzly bear, the fact that it can backtrack and do things to deceive humans and help camouflage itself. Counts of grizzly bears covering their tracks or concealing themselves from hunters with rocks and trees. And like humans, bears are omnivores. Omnivore, the Latin word omni, all. Bears will eat almost anything. And they found that the omnivore species in the animal kingdom have to be smarter. They have to figure out more ways and places to find food, and they need a better brain. They say a grizzly's memory is so sharp that it can remember where it encountered a certain food 10 years or more earlier. Pretty amazing.
My dog does that too.
Mental maps.
Okay. And there's Yogi stealing the picnic basket. Well, there's the Tree of Life poster. And that shows the evolutionary path of pretty much all living things, everything from simple algae to higher order mammals.
Cladogram.
And it does bring up that question. In the evolution of mammals and other kinds of life, if there's a soul, when did it first appear? Even in the evolution of man, is there a point at which once an IQ went over a certain threshold, the soul suddenly got
This
implanted
was
in
a
it?
question that was put to Francis Collins, the now retired head of the NIH. I went to a symposium with my AP bio students. It was in Harrisonburg, Virginia, the biotechnology symposium. And he gave his testimony about how, as a physical chemist, and later went to medical school, he became he became Christian.
Mhm.
And so at one point, this little girl, when he was finishing up his presentation, these were high school students. And she said, if you believe in evolution, at what point did the spirit enter into man, between the Neanderthal and the present day man? And I loved Colin's answer. He hesitated. He said, I don't know, because science doesn't have all the answers.
Yeah.
Okay. Next one. Flexing the brain. In the 1990s, research showed that running increased the birth of new hippocampal neurons. That's an area of the brain, the hippocampus. And that doing particularly aerobic exercises was good to generate more of those neurons. There's something called BDNF, or brain-derived neurotrophic factor. It's produced throughout the body and promotes growth and survival of newly created neurons. So get active, get your brain active both mentally and try to get aerobic exercise to stimulate the brain. Next slide. Atrophy of the hippocampus is associated with memory loss. Again, more exercise, more BDNF, better size and connectivity in the hippocampus. Studies in Illinois showed adults with 12 months of aerobic exercise had more BDNF, larger hippocampuses, and better memory and cognitive function. I know they're advertising on TV, Prevagen and other things.
Yeah.
But what we know scientifically, and I can't say about Prevagen, I don't know, but we can definitely say that the aerobic activity will work.
Cheaper.
Okay. Well, most of us grew up in the Beatles era. How many here remember their song, Do You Want to Know a Secret? Do you want to know a secret? Do you promise not to tell?
All that.
Yeah.
Okay. So they found that with secrets, one part of the brain wants to reveal something, another part may not want to. Here's that big conference going on. Go ahead and tell. No, keep the secret. Keeping secrets, it generally is unhealthy for the brain. It almost puts us attention. Psychologist James Spanamacher studied rape or incest victims who, out of guilt or shame, held the secret in. And he said the act of not discussing or confiding the event may be more damaging than the event itself. So that tells us what a lot of theologians and psychologists have said. When we've experienced pain, suffering, traumatic event, don't bottle it up. Talk about it, work it out. Don't try to completely bottle it up. This may also reveal the appeal of prayer, especially where religions have personal gods. Prayer is a way of people to let go of things. So even though they don't have a human entity listening to them, it still serves a method of their feeling they're releasing this secret to someone or something. Okay, next one. Again, the brain has evolved multiple independent ways to solve problems, like Patrick there with the Chiefs. He takes the hike and, you don't know what he's going to do to make scramble, change the play. Computers often try to pick a best way to solve the problems. Our brains have evolved teams that attack the problem in different overlapping ways. So our brain often comes up with multiple solutions. I was putting the mailbox up the other day and figured out, well, let's see, do I put poured concrete or bricks or stone, or what do I do? And you're kind of weighing the different things. So the brain has multiple paths of its way. Next one. Okay. Brain chemistry upsets can mess our free will. 57% of frontotemporal dementia patients display socially violating behavior. Sets them up for trouble with the law. As compared to 27% of Alzheimer's patients. It certainly gives us a warning sign that dementia and Alzheimer's are not good things to have, particularly if they advance and they do manifest symptoms. The treatment of Parkinson's, patients given a drug called pramipexole sometimes turn into pathological gamblers. For some, the addiction reached beyond gambling to other compulsive behaviors like eating, alcohol consumption, or hypersexuality. Right, next one. Carrying a particular set of genes. This one's going to knock some people out here. If you are a carrier of a particular set of genes, the probability of your committing a violent crime goes up by as much as 800%.
Wow.
Wow.
There's the crime. People carrying the genes, how frequently aggravated assault, homicide, armed robbery, sexual assault, not carrying the genes puts you in that much safer. They found the overwhelming majority of prisoners carry these genes, including over 98% on death row. So let's go to the next one. What are those sedatives?
Yeah.
The answer is they're summarized in the Y chromosome. You're a carrier if you're a male.
I know it.
Those shooters are
Darn.
good. Young male shooters.
Yeah.
Genetics versus environment. Huntington's disease can be traced to a single gene, but most serious diseases are polygenetic, traceable to tens or even hundreds of genes. They have found that repeated social rejection leads to a deteriorated dopamine system, which is a pathway to psychosis, schizophrenia, and mental issues. So immigrants and minorities are subject to more rejection, and hence that social rejection brings on a lot of depression and bad behavior. In baby monkeys, about 20% have social anxiety behavior. Stress hormones higher. And about 5% have overly aggressive behavior. But looking at the effect of genetics versus environment, if you have the short allele, that's a collection of some, a type, it's not a collection, it's a type. You have a short allele for this characteristic, or the long allele, that's a different one. If you're raised with your peers and you have the short allele, you'll probably have aggressive behavior that was separated from your mom. So a combination of having this genetic propensity and being raised in a less than optimal environment with a loving mom makes you more likely to be aggressive. Whereas those raised with their mother still showed calmness. The long allele. So it just shows that it's often not only do you need a genetic propensity, but you need an environment kick in to activate it and make it worse. Next one. And again, here's the chart. You can see that people that had the short and a lot of stressful events had a much higher probability of depression.
Ron?
Yeah.
That last slide, and maybe this one too, could be summarized. There's a new part of brain science right now called epigenetics. And it talks about people having those genes, but there are certain environmental aspects that cause those genes to be switched on. Whereas in other people, they're not switched on, they stay off. So epigenetics is studying what causes those genes to switch on.
Okay. All right. And then the final slide, we want to get into this discussion. Here I go with the comic book cover again. Theological questions. If we're judged by our beliefs or moral character, is our prefrontal cortex that is judged? There was an episode of Star Trek, the original, where Captain Kirk was split into two personalities. The episode's called The Enemy Within, and the aggressive part of him grabbed the cute nurse and threw a kiss on her that was unsolicited. So he had a good part and a bad part running around the ship at the same time. But there's also a comic cover and Batman saying, Robin and Batgirl are vanishing and the life forces are being drawn from them. So it gets back to, again, a theological question. If we come to a day of judgment, are we going to be judged by, where's the judgment going to fall on? Is it this Casper ghost that's within us? Or is it this electrochemical block? Will they take the batting average of our brain over our entire life and say, well, you were a total jerk when you were in your 20s. You came to Jesus when you were 37 and turned it around. So what your overall batting average is, whereas someone else, you were a jerk all your life. In fact, it got worse.
So God, it wasn't my fault I was a bad person. I had the genes and I had the brain chemistry, and you can't kick me out of heaven because it wasn't my fault. Right?
Martin Luther said, the just shall live by faith.
Well, Herschel Walker is using some of that reasoning, Steve.
Herschel Walker, the Senate candidate from Georgia. Well, let's talk about that. That's a good question. How much of what we do is biological, genetic, and how much is environment, and how much is our own free will that we can change how we behave? We can hear a sermon saying, be kind, but can we really do it? How much can we change our behavior? Zoomers, please feel free to jump in here too. Love to hear what you think.
Well, I can just say that from my perspective, I think a lot of our socialization from the time we're born is around self-regulation. So I feel like that's part of the conversation that we should probably focus on as well, because it's not just physiologic or spiritual. There's a self regulatory component to all of this.
Yeah, our free will, our own desire.
Hold your hand up and they'll call.
But how effective can that be if you've got genetics and chemistry against you? If you're a person with genetics and chemistry against you? Yes, go ahead.
Yeah, this is Donald Clark with Lola.
Yeah, hi, Grant.
How you doing?
Good.
Okay, there are a couple of thoughts that I've had. Number one, they have pictures of the exact moment when the sperm fertilizes the egg, where there's something from outside, something that penetrates into the egg at the same time that the sperm does. It's kind of a foggy kind of a looking thing. And a couple of you are kind of looking, yeah, I've seen that. And then there was one I saw the other day where there's someone that died and there's a picture of them and it's leaving the body, this whatever it is. Is that the soul? That's the question. That's what is that was the main idea behind what was going on with that particular picture. I don't know if you've heard that or not. Anyway, that was what I had to say about the soul. And I guess another point is that generally speaking, nature nurture is roughly 60-40. And back in the 50s and 60s, it was 60% genetic and 40% environmental. And now it's kind of turned the other way.
Why is it?
It's just the people and the way they are, the way they are studying things. It doesn't, it's the scientist that's making that judgment, not, it's not that way per se. Okay, thank you.
We did a lesson in 2019 that touched on epigenetics.
Did you?
And I pulled out a couple of the slides to show Alice this week. She had mentioned it. We could go back and revisit that sometime.
Switch on, switch off.
This leads me to believe, well, the rise of atheism in our society and secularism, particularly in the United States. Dealing with people that are atheists, that don't believe you have a soul, or the rise of atheism in general, how do we explain that? I've often wondered, people that don't believe you have a soul, period, the atheists. How does one deal with that? I mean, the rise, particularly the numbers and the loss of attendance in churches versus people that simply don't need religion or think they don't need religion, any religion.
People identifying as none, no connection.
Right.
Or belief is
Yeah,
increasing.
I mean,
Obviously.
how do you explain it that man does have a soul?
How do you-
Yeah,
Science,
that one, Ron.
science doesn't support it.
doesn't support that we
Man
have
having a soul. Yeah, there's no scientific.
Yeah,
Can't
the
prove it.
rise of,
But now the other subject, there's a book, and actually I've got a lesson prepared and I'm debating whether to give or not, called Secular Surge. It's a book
Yeah.
that came out just,
that would be a
Year
very
ago.
interesting.
but it looks at, and it splits secularism into a lot of different camps. For example, there's atheists. There's also people that we'll call non-religionists. And there's some different, there's some different categories. So secularism doesn't necessarily, atheists are maybe only 20% of secularists. So, maybe we should get that list.
Yeah.
I think it'd be an interesting discussion.
But it looks at also church
Yeah,
and
because
beliefs.
when our founders put the country together with the Constitution, people were quite religious at that time. And it's addressed in our Constitution. And in other words, the direction of the country, which way is it going? Is that healthy? Is it healthy for us to be totally secular or 75% secular?
It depends on what the religious drift, which directions it's taking. I would argue that if you're an Islamic extremist, that religion is what's taking hold of the government. You're in trouble. You're in big trouble. So
I work with.
religion in itself doesn't necessarily
Ensure.
mean good. Yeah. Religion coupled with government can bring really bad
Right,
things.
that's the reason,
Yeah.
it goes back to why there's a separation.
Right.
I remember reading a few years ago a book called The Religious Brain about the effect. Well, it started off talking about why are some people so drawn to religion? What does it fill for their brain? And why are some so opposed to religion? Their brain leads them in that direction to be opposed. And then also talks about the effect of religion, like extremist philosophies, on the brain, and why that is attractive to some people, Islamic terrorists or something. Fascinating. And it brings in all this. It's so complicated, the brain chemistry and genetics and environment,
The way they're raised.
behavior. Yes, that it's just not as simple as we think. Judy, go ahead.
Oh, well, we probably all heard the term that a person is hardwired to be one way or another, like being homosexual. Or a person may have narcissistic personality disorder. And that, I mean a real disorder. Many people are narcissistic, but the narcissistic personality disorder that's diagnosed by a professional, there is, there's no changing that person. So you must deal with those kind of people. And there are some people who are hardwired, like you were pointing out in the presentation, to be criminal. And through life, I have come to the realization, painfully so, sometimes in my neighborhood, that when good people do nothing, then, nothing good happens, and, you can't correct problems. When good people do nothing, things go badly. So no matter how your brain is wired, I think good people who have a healthy brain and, have, they have, are blessed with many resources and wealth and everything. Good people, as far as people as a whole, rather than these individuals that are hardwired, religion, regardless of religion, because religion has been very violent throughout history, that when good people come together to deal with these people in society that are hardwired to do harm, then that makes all the difference in the world.
I want us to be really careful. I'm compelled to say this.
Go ahead.
I haven't studied all of that genetic hardwiring stuff. I just want us to be really careful, because through many decades, if not centuries, it's become easy for those who seek power to say it's those people over there who are the bad people, and whether they can help it or not, it's those people over there who are the bad people, and they must be eliminated. And I'm not saying you're saying that. I just want all of us to be really aware that science and human behavior are quite complex, and we just need to be careful about good people and bad people, and saying that it's those kind, because that's just one step of saying, well, then all the Jews are to blame and we've got to kill them all and put them in Auschwitz, right? So I don't know. I just felt compelled to say that.
It's like giving up on somebody too, saying, you're just hardwired to be a criminal, and so I'm gonna put you in the prison and not pay any more attention to you, not try and rehabilitate you.
What if they decide to use the Y chromosome as the basis?
And I have to say one thing too. I gotta say
And I
one,
didn't mean to say that you were saying that.
What I was saying is that when
It's okay.
nothing for the person who's hardwired to commit a crime, then you've got a serious problem, like this young man running through my building with knives, and he was having a drug-induced psychotic episode, and he had to be tracked down, he had to be arrested. But the interesting thing that is different today than what would have happened maybe just a couple of years ago, instead of taking him to jail, they took him to the hospital. And he was treated, and he's back.
Wow.
So that's what I mean by when good
Exactly.
people do
Yes.
nothing.
Yes.
Well, you
Yeah,
know,
it's a good
it's
point.
keeping with Pastor Fellmeier's sermon today, humility, having to carry a sense of humility. Einstein, probably considered one of the geniuses of modern times, said life is really a mystery. Physicists, life is quite a mystery. When you get around with physicists, you know, they seem to connect to that. There's so much unknown. They keep the mind open.
he also said God doesn't play dice with the universe.
We've just got a few minutes left. Did you want to say something else?
Oh, I was just gonna say, to tack on to this conversation in the corner, that good people is kind of a loaded term. Because Jesus, when he was asked who's good, he said, no one's good except God.
Well, I think it's very important for all of us, no matter who we are, where we come from, or whatnot, to recognize good.
Yes.
And I think that the church
No
helps
argument.
us to do that. But when we get these big gray areas where, you know, you can have such an open mind that your brains fall out. I mean, that you
That's a
don't
good line.
recognize good and evil, and so you do nothing, you know, and that's the downfall of.
Well, that was the dilemma
I
for
think
Germany.
that's the beginning of the downfall
That
of
was
society.
the dilemma for Germany and Japan.
Yeah.
What are we gonna do when the militarists rise up?
Yeah, and then you leave the door wide open for those who would do evil
Yeah.
Right.
versus
Right.
good. to
What do
your
we do with
community.
Ukraine and Russia? I
Yeah.
mean,
Yeah.
there are big, hard, complex things to consider. You're right.
We've got just a couple minutes left. Zoomers, anybody want to comment? Jim or Lola or John? I'll throw this out too. Do you think we can teach kindness and justice? Do you think we're doing a good enough job of teaching kids to be kind and just? Should we be doing more in schools and churches to model it? What do you think, Steve?
As a man thinketh in his heart, so is he.
Right,
That's where that's from.
right.
Empathy can be cultivated
Can be taught.
and taught, yeah. We can definitely
It's
improve,
in Proverbs.
improve ourselves and improve society by teaching empathy.
Taught and also lived. Behaviors influence more than taught.
A lot of it's on parenting, isn't it?
Yes, it
To model for the children,
Yes.
take them through what it is to be kind and go and take them to serve and deliver food and model the steps for them.
Yes.
I think that's really an important part. Okay, any other thoughts? It's 11:31. We have to adjourn for lunch. Thank you, Ron, for another wonderful presentation. Thank you. Next week, we have a speaker about Ukraine, a military fellow who has served there, keeps going back there. And he's going to tell us what is going on there and how we can serve justice from that perspective. Thanks, everybody. See you next week.
Bye.